Pointless, boring, long, demanding. That is how a younger me saw books. They seemed endless to me, and they take time and effort, same like schoolwork. I'd much rather come home and watch TV or play video games. However, my parents insisted on me reading. They made me read books before I could play video games. They gave me books on all birthdays and celebratory occasions. They even rewarded me for reading books. And back then, I thought of reading books as a punishment. It's tedious. It's develop something boring like literacy skills, and at the age of 10, I didn't see that as important. However, I understood over time that they were trying to open my eyes to new perspectives and the great worlds that lie within books. Back then, they were boring. Now, I see them as a source of entertainment. Because books can ignite the human mind. They can spark creativity, spark imagination, and spark new perspectives that change the way we see our world today. However, my story is only a tiny little piece within a grand story, the story of books. What we nowadays call as books have gone through a rich history and has changed over generations, starting with clay tablets in ancient Egypt, to tied together bamboo sticks in Eastern Asia, to paper sheets in ancient Rome and ancient Greece. And then, in the 15th century, a German man by the name of Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press, which revolutionized books and their mass distributions. And at the start, it was just for knowledge purposes, for scientists and researchers. However, then it developed as a way of art, by expressing yourself through fictional stories. And that inspired many. However, at the start, it was only monks and priests who were able to read, and the act of reading was a privilege, and a book was a relic. However, nowadays, with all the digital technology, raises a question. How come books, which have been centers of entertainment and knowledge over years, suddenly lose their worth? For me, the answer is quite simple. It's the internet. Staying online and connected is, of course, very important. However, we now no longer only use it for communication or education, but we also largely use the internet for entertainment. And we're attracted to the bright and colorful changing lights we see on screens. However, that just decreases our patience. That's why TikTok videos and Instagram Reels are so addictive, because we can see rapid changing lights and we can feel an array of emotions by scrolling through many 30-second videos, while we lose the patience for books, which take time and concentration to get into the plot twist or into the climax to actually find the book interesting. And now, for longer satisfaction, we watch movies or TV series, and books just fade. However, some of the stories and movies you see were not meant for the big screens in the first place. Think for yourself. What characters do you like the most in movies or series? And where did most of them come from? Books. Harry Potter, for example, a famous example, has generated $8 billion in revenue from their movies alone. And it sold extensive merchandise, movie set tours, plushies, cups, Lego sets, whatever you can think of. However, it all started with the writing of J.K. Rowling. Similarly, The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, another prominent franchise, which started with the writing of J.R.R. Tolkien. But there are many more. The Grinch, Spider-Man, The Great Gatsby, Alice's Adventure in the Wonderland. All of these were books which were developed into movies, and that's how they became popular. However, we now forget where they all started. These books started with the imagination of authors, and that imagination is the key for books to become a timeless source of entertainment. I want to introduce you a quote by Carl Sagan, an American astronomer and scientist, who said that one glance at a book and you're inside the mind of somebody else. Somebody perhaps dead for thousands of years. Across the millennia, an author is speaking clearly and silently, inside your head, directly to you. This quote introduces the idea that books are not only powerful because of their ideas, but they're also powerful because they're enduring over generations and generations. And anything online you can see can be deleted with a single click, single tap of a button. But books remain. Books cannot be edited like Instagram posts, cannot be edited like Wikipedia pages. They need to be reviewed, proofread, again and again and again before they can be published. And that's why they're staple sources. Sources of not only information, but joy. And today I'm here in front of you to spread that joy by motivating you to read books. Think about it. Every day, you definitely have some time in the morning or in the evening, whether it is you woke up a bit early before work or school, or you're right before going to bed. And most of the time, it's not time where you can study or do something productive. And therefore, you can use it for something useful, like reading books. However, a lot of us spend it on our phones, which I believe, and many others do, that it's frankly a waste of time. However, you can use those 20, 30 minutes to read. You could read 10 pages at that time. If you read 10 pages every day, you can read 300 pages in 1 month. If you can read 300 pages in 1 month, you can read 3,600 pages in a year. However, to put that into perspective, the whole series of all 7 Harry Potter books is 3,400 pages long. You could read more than the whole series in 1 year, which is remarkable. And books are great because they can enhance our minds. You can read a book and see it one way. Your friend or a family member could read it and see it in a completely different way. Because we are unique. We have imaginations of our own which we develop through reading books. And that is what makes us powerful. We can imagine whatever we want, however we want, whenever we want. However, I stand before you here advocating for you to read books. And I cannot guarantee that the next one you'll pick up will be engaging and will pique your interest. And it doesn't matter if you're an avid reader or not. If you're a scientist or a writer, a student or a teacher, you can read a book and find it horrible. And that's absolutely fine. However, to define something as horrible or say you don't like a book, you need to think. I can confidently say some books I don't like. However, the only reason I can say I don't like them is because I thought of something when reading a book. I can say I don't like the motifs of the character. I don't like the way the plot progressed. However, all of these ideas come from thinking when you read, and they can only come from reading. However, to develop that thinking, you need to read more and more books, and that can be done through motivation. For younger students and teenagers like myself, reading can develop this critical thinking and develop vocabulary, which is very important for schools or university. For adults, reading can be a pastime to get away from your job, get away from the stress of looking to your screen or talking to your colleagues the whole day, and you can delve into another world away from the reality, which could be very stressful at times. For parents of younger children, give them books. However, don't give them books with endless text, because that will just confuse them. Remember, the essence of books is that they spread a message and they're made out of paper. And therefore, comic books or graphic novels are the way to go. And that could even be better because children can interpret images and words simultaneously. Books were there at the start of human history. They were there through darker times, like the plague. They were there through happier times, like the Renaissance. And they're here now. So, please, I ask of you, sit down, open your eyes, flip a page, and start a new journey for yourself. And you can let there be books tomorrow. Last but not least, I want to leave you with a quote. which surprisingly came from a recently trending video game. However, it was primarily inspired by a French book. Learn from the ones that came before, and lay the trail for the ones who come after. Thank you.